I think today I'm terribly worried about what I see around us happening in Mumbai. It's such a fast pace.
We cannot wait for anybody else to do it. In a democracy, you have to kind of lead.
But why don't we use good architects to help develop proper rules and regulations as we move ahead? Why is it left only to politicians and bureaucrats? Why are we not using the brilliant people we have within the city?
It's the last chance we have.
The DesignFM supported by Parador by BirlaNu and Asahi India Glass Limited. Curated by Eztablish in association with FOAID.
Hello and welcome to the DesignFM. I'm your host Fardeen Bamgara, and with me today architect Rahul Kadri and architect Brinda Somaya. Neither of them require an introduction, but together they are two of the most thoughtful minds in Indian architecture. I'm so glad to have both of you all on this seat. Rahul, you stepped into a practice with a strong architectural voice and ethical grounding. How do you carry that forward today?
True, a very powerful voice, and the commonalities in our kind of approaches to architecture was the garden.
All right.
And for Dad, it was an urban garden. For me, it was more forests, because that's where the formative years were. So it was the difference and the dichotomy between these two is really what defines our work, where his architecture is very formal and ordered, and mine is little more organic and natural, or organic actually. So at the core there's nature, but the expressions are different.
Understood. You're transitioning leadership to the next generation, and you're still very engaged at the core of it all. So, how is it letting go, relinquishing, and still being a part of it? How is that experience?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I have a son and a daughter, and my son, there was no question of his being an architect, and my daughter actually became a lawyer first.
All right.
And I often wondered what I would do with the practice, because there was no one over there. And you know, as Elizabeth Diller said today, architecture is very slow, takes a long time. So decisions have to be made. And then suddenly on her own, Nandini began to show interest, and then decided that she would rather not be a lawyer, but wanted to go back to architecture school. And did the full 5-year course. And then she came into the studio, which, as you know, I started my studio in the 70s, so it was already quite old by that time. And I think for the first couple of years, it was like, looking back, I think she just shadowed me, you know, very quiet, but listening, almost like osmosis into everything. And then over the years, now she's been with me almost 18 years. So naturally things have changed, and I am so grateful, because times have changed. Everything is so fast, so different, whether it's technology, whether it's building, and new ideas, new thoughts. I still like to believe that architects work as long as they can. We had Frank Gehry, who just died when he was 93, and I think Neutra, or was it, no, who was the other one? One other architect. So I don't know how long we all work, but it is a cerebral profession as well.
True. And
I think that's an advantage of longevity of people within architectural practices. But certainly there's been a change. I think she runs many of the projects. I think I have more free time, and I do certain things in a different way. I also do many different things which I could not do earlier, directly or indirectly connected with the profession. So there's a lot of freedom, I feel. But I love the fact that we have a younger generation now, because we also have now 4 associates with Nandini, and then of course the other architects. So I love to learn, I love to watch them and hear them as well. We have disagreements. Everyone smiles and laughs sometimes because we really argue about things still. But as they say, you know, a mother and a daughter, you never hold that back, and you can be very upset, and then in 10 minutes, you know. So we agree on many things. I think we agree on the principles of the practice, whether it's the importance of design, whether it's the ethics and the integrity of the practice, the way we work with our clients. Almost 70% of our clients are repetitive clients. But we don't always agree on every process that happens, or every design, or every thought. But that's the fun of it. I never anticipated it at all. When it happened, I was just very happy. And, you know, projects take a very, very long time. So when there is no continuity, either through family or through associates, how does one continue with the practice? You know, I mean, I know Rahul also, and we have large projects, which might take, many of our projects have taken a decade or more. So the continuity of practice with its high standards is very important for any client.
With my dad and me, and maybe it's how men run a practice and a woman does. Shimal's practice I see as discussion based, whereas with my dad it would be, he would make a sketch and then his architects would take that forward, but it would be his idea and not much of a discussion around the design. So when I came in, he wasn't used to discussing. And if I would say, you know, Dad, this can be like this better, saying, okay, you do it then. You know, so it was never like, okay, let's talk about it, what can happen, how can it be better. It was, you make a proposal, so, you know, I was fresh out of college and, you know, driving to office, and I said, you know, Dad, it can be nicer. So he says, okay, you think can be nicer? Make something. So I collected all my friends and we would work through the night. We'd get the studio in the night. And a week before we were supposed to present to the client, he said, okay, show me what you've done. So we showed it to him and he says, nah, you're trying to change the world too soon. I'm not going to show this to the client. I'm showing what I've done. And then I had to carry his designs and go with him. Kashmir, and I was just sulking all the time. You know, the frustration of it all. So with you and Nandini, there seems to have been, you know,
yes,
a lot of collaborative
very,
work.
very different. Couldn't
Right.
be more different. We're also a very research-based organization, especially Nandini brought back that in great measure when she came back after her lawyer, which is a solicitor as well. We also are a very collaborative practice. While Nandini and I may have concepts, it's not like it's just a concept for a particular project. It's a way of thinking. It's the ideas that come and flow through our mind. And then depending on the project, how is the ideas and thoughts and growth of mental resources put into that. So if we get a new project, she and I will discuss it because we know whether it's large. We also do a lot of small work. We do big corporate work, but we do a lot of NGO work. So our practice is very, very diverse. It's not at all in a straight line. You know, we do millions of square feet and we do 10,000 square feet. So the thinking process has to be very, very different. And I think she and I think a lot alike because one day she met the client first and she came out, and then I went in separately, and then I came out, and then we discussed with each other, and we found we actually use the same language even, which is funny. And then we work a lot with our associates who are leading different verticals. I always say that an architect is not a star, we're part of a constellation. So we have a lot of brainstorming sessions, we take a lot of ideas, and sometimes we bring in even very young architects from within our studio, and we like to hear what they have to say. But we don't do that indefinitely because there has to be a timeline. But we brainstorm first, maybe with Nandini and me, and maybe a senior person, and then we open it up. And then of course, we are the bosses eventually. But we have a lot of discussions. There is a lot of debate. I think it's really nice that Rahul and I are sitting because we're very, very different ways of the way we work.
Yeah, because both of y'all have intergenerational practices. And there's bound to be like a different perspective on worldview, different concepts, technology. So I'm sure it is a challenge to balance it, so to say. You all follow 5 C's. You have contemporary, city, conservation, craft, and culture. I wanted to ask you, which one of these do you feel is the most urgent need today? And which one do you think is the most neglected out of these? Not as a practice, but as society.
I think today, for me, the city is the most urgent need.
All right.
Especially because what we see, what's happening around us. In one breath, we talk about sustainability, and the next breath, we're actually demolishing buildings which are in good condition. Robert Moore always said that the best way to be sustainable is to have the building. Like someone said, as long as we're building, we're creating a problem. So I'm not saying we don't build. Like just now we were downstairs and we understand that Mumbai is growing. We have to have housing. We have to have other facilities. There are huge issues and huge problems. But I still think that we have to be much more thinking in the way the rules are developed. Long-term plans have to be worked out. We can't just do these sporadic moves, changing of ideas and changing of FSI, because then it's very detrimental to the beauty, to the livability of a city. Like Jane Jacobs said, you need 5 things to make a city livable. So while housing might be one of them, there are many other things that are extremely important to make a city livable. Whether it's open spaces, whether it's the way you have different types of use within multipurpose use, how you keep conservation, how you keep and restore certain buildings. So that's equally important. But also important are contemporary work. We all are architects who build new as well.
Correct.
So each one has its own importance. And of course, culture and craft go together because that's always been my interest. And Nandini's too, we do exhibitions and things, museums like she talked about. But I think today I'm terribly worried about what I see around us happening in Mumbai. It's such a fast pace suddenly that it's at the same time I understand it's easy to sit on a sofa and talk. But why don't we use, not me, but good architects to help develop proper rules and regulations as we move ahead? Why is it left only to politicians and bureaucrats?
Correct.
Why are we not using the brilliant people we have within the city?
You yourself have worked on urban landscape projects as well. So, where do you think, as architects, you have a say, and where do you think you need to have a say?
I'm just going to reframe that a little bit. I think India is still in a very nascent state of cities. We think we are, when we are in the middle of it, we don't realize that India urbanization is still not happened to a great extent. 35 to 40% of our people only live in the cities. Elizabeth, in the morning, spoke about that in the US, only 3.5% of the land mass is occupied by cities, and 80% of the people live in the cities. So we really have a long way to go, and urbanization is going to happen at a tremendous scale. It's going to happen at a tremendous scale in the next 10 to 20 years. So it's never too late to actually start, and now is the time. We need to articulate as a society what kind of city do we want. Indians, what do we like? What do we love? What should the principles be? Unfortunately, bureaucrats follow policy and law. They can't really go outside the framework of policy and law. And the Maharashtra Town Planning Act was written in 1967, and it was modeled on the British Town Planning Act, which was written in the 1940s. And if you read the Maharashtra Town Planning Act, there is no word like environment. There's not one mention of ecology in that. So concepts of sustainability were just not there. They were responding to pollution, wherein the answer was separate. So land use planning, and so Maharashtra Town Planning Act only talks about land use planning. Industry should be here, residential should be here, commercial should be here. But we all know a successful city is mixed use. And so we are still, our policies have not changed to accommodate mixed use the way it ought to be. And I say we're nascent, we're also nascent politically, where we are not truly democratic as yet. So we're still kind of in the feudal mindset. Our democracy and the voices, people are not raising. See, in a democracy, it's incumbent on people to make enough noise for change to happen, right? And I don't know who said it, that in a democracy, your leaders is who you deserve, right, as a people. So this is the bunch we have. We deserve them because we haven't created anybody else. So it's nascent, and I think we need to amplify the voices we have. We have an architectural group now where there's discussions happening, things fermenting. We hopefully will be able to influence to some extent the new High Court building, which is being built as a group. So it's really upon us to be able to engage and change things and get things done. We cannot wait for anybody else to do it. In a democracy, you have to kind of lead. Yeah, you have to be that change. Unfortunately, running our practices between this, that, and the other, we just don't get enough time to do it. But it's high time that some of us prioritize that much more. And you win some, you lose some. Brinda has done so many public projects, just all kinds of schemes, a walkway from Church Gate, there's just so many things. But kind of guiding these things through the systems which we have, which, as she says, is not designed, the system is not designed to use external help. So that design, that system, that design needs to be changed so that external help is accepted, celebrated.
I think almost 20 years ago, the Mumbai Esplanade project, I worked with a town planner, and we had suggested how all the different Maidans could be connected. We saw how people were falling out of Churchgate Station, falling out of BT Station. And if you go to any European country or any other part of the world, they come out into plazas and the cars go below ground. Those days there were no tunnels. I'm talking a long time ago. And we prepared this presentation. We talked about how we could connect the Azad Maidan to the Oval Maidan, how we worked out even the slopes, the angles of the tunnel between Churchgate and Fountain, how we could pedestrianize areas. I have to say that the people took it really well. We had exhibitions and the press loved it, and the bureaucracy up to a point. But I alone didn't have the power or the connections to take it beyond that. And finally, nothing happened, and the excuse was there was some problem with cars and things like that. It was a huge proposal. And today we heard many interesting things that architects sometimes can bring their proposals, because we have the ideas and thoughts and we can bring our proposals and convince. But after that happened to us, I felt that after spending a year and a half of our time and reaching a stage when there was no further interest, then that you feel that, okay, maybe like Rahul also says, it's too difficult. If it was a small thing, it's fine. But this was a big idea. It was a really big idea, and we need some big ideas. Now, today, tunnels are coming. They're trying to pedestrian, but it's all piecemeal. I'm doing Kalagoda, I'll do a little bit Saturday, Sunday. Then I'll do something else here. I'll put a tunnel here. But that proposal, if it had been taken up and technically considered, it could have been, I still feel, still today, people, when I meet them, say, what happened to it?
I feel it was very progressive for that time.
So we don't, what we're both discussing, the ability for other architects, not just one or two who have that connection, but more than them, if young people, young architects, people with experience as well, could bring their ideas, and those ideas should be listened to, should be observed and accepted that they are bringing something worthwhile. It's that hierarchy that has to go. There's a very definite hierarchy within everything in the city.
Which you cannot penetrate.
It's very difficult, So I remember somebody said, oh, but why didn't you go to, what do they think? We all know the governor and the chief minister. Oh, we don't know. I don't know any of them. I can't just walk into them. And I don't have the ability to network into them either, but I have the ideas and thoughts. Like Rahul said, everyone doesn't have that sort of networking facility, but we should not need to have that. As a profession, we should be respected and we should be asked and listened to some extent.
Like somebody who is just coming out of college, do you think they can navigate the policies, the on-ground realities of bringing change? You all are experienced, you all have been here for a while, and you all have beautiful ideas.
Well, I think Gen Z needs to whip themselves into a little bit of shape because they're hopping around a bit too much compared to some of the others. But I'm sure they come with their impatient, very young people. I don't know whether Rahul sounded, but certainly in some studios. It also depends on the studio where they go, the college where they come from, and the studio where they train, what their beliefs are. So each person is so different. But I think there's some commonality running, that the fact that you've done architecture is you do want to contribute towards the built and the unbuilt environment, both of that together. And I think if, we like to, I'm sure he does too, we like to encourage our younger people to do smaller projects, to understand. But they can't just come in and think they know everything. I think it's a very complex profession. It's not that you can just design the next thing your building is built. I think personally, it's a very difficult profession, because designing and drawing is just one aspect of it. Converting that into the building or the complex or the garden or whatever, to actually see it come up and see that that's what your vision was and that's what has come true, is no easy task.
But I'm sure it's equally satisfying.
Oh, it's wonderful. I always say it's the best profession in the world. Maybe the worst paying profession, really, truthfully, if you have any integrity and ethics in your practice, it's very, very difficult to run.
Okay.
And I'm sure many young people go into connected areas of architecture or even give it up because it's not an easy profession. It's not very well paid in studios. If you start on your own, they're also difficult to navigate. But it's a very, very satisfying profession because it encompasses every aspect of life. And I don't think any other profession does that. So if you're devoted and dedicated, you can manage.
I can imagine that. You often hear people talk about Mumbai as too dense or too unbuildable, too overpopulated. From an implementation perspective, I wanted to understand what would be some key changes, whether in policy and framework or as architects and in design, that could break this barrier and change the conversation?
Firstly, this thing of density, you know, our average density is 22,000 people per square kilometer, which is kind of double what the ideal ought to be. But we need to understand this in a little more granular way. The density in British Bombay, or the older parts of the city, and there are many parts where the density is 1 lakh people per square kilometer. So these are ground plus 4-story buildings, but very tightly packed, small tenements, multiple families staying. So the density there is 1 lakh, right? Outside of that, so if you take the newer parts of Mumbai, when I say newer, I'm saying Malabar Hill and Parador, etc. There the density is actually less than 4,000. And it's this 1 lakh versus the 4,000 that creates an average. In the suburbs also, the density is not more than 6,000-7,000. So the densities are in the older parts and in the slums. 50% of people live in slums and they are dense. But the rest of the city is not, right? So can we get more dense? I think it's about spreading the density more evenly. One thing I think we need to get away from is FSI. And instead, some kind of urban form planning where, in the last the master plan, when the Singapore company had done it, they made mistakes to do with the existing land use, etc. But there were some very powerful ideas which were there. One was the densification around the metros and the stations, which makes sense because then you can actually walk there. So if you have more people living around the stations, they've taken the FSI around the stations to 8. And then as you moved away, the density became less. So that was one very powerful idea which got dropped. And the second one was our streets, and the way our streets are planned, where the front open space, which is mandated, which is a private open space, they had said that should become a public open space. So the pedestrian space then would actually double or triple. And they had said that on certain roads, etc., shops and commercial things must be there on the ground, or ground and first. So these are two very powerful ideas which we lost. And the third one is this idea of, for ventilation, we leave open space all around the buildings, which I think needs to have a little more nuanced design, where you have the cross ventilation, but you don't waste so much space. They say that it's almost 15% of the open spaces in the city is lost in these, open spaces all around the building, which are hardly used.
Okay.
So, if you take buildings with the older part of the city or anywhere abroad, whether it's London or Paris, etc., they don't have these spaces. They may have it in the front and the back or a courtyard, but they touch. And all that space, if it comes into the public realm, suddenly Mumbai would have much more open space without having to change the FSI or increase the FSI. So there are these 3 or 4 laws which, if we tweak or bring back, we can transform the city.
All right. So I'm going to round this up with one question to you. What is it that gives you hope for the future of a city like Mumbai?
Without hope, there's no life. I mean, it's an internal thing. I'm an optimist.
Is there like this one thing that you see where you're like hopeful that, okay, we're headed in that direction, it's a good change?
Well, I was opposed to the coastal road. It got built, waste of money, but it's there. Now we're probably going to have the largest gardens Mumbai's ever had, 175 acres of gardens along the coast. We have a promenade, a 7.5 kilometer promenade, which once the connection isn't done at one part, but once it's done, I think that will transform the city. And another hope I have, I don't see it happening, but I hope it will, is that our eastern waterfront, what is the BPT land, becomes, the one huge mistake that the government did when they were there earlier, they gave the Mumbai Port Trust the right to plan on their own.
Okay.
So they took the right of the city away and they gave it to a private company, that you can plan this land the way you want, you can make your own laws, your own rules, which I think is wrong. So that land, when Dhammaseva was built, it was said that when this land is available, it will come back to the city. Yeah. So I think it needs to come back to the city, and the opportunity of planning that 600 acres is immense for the city. It's the last chance we have. We lost the chance for the mill lands when Charles Correa's plan was changed and then one word was added to change everything. So this is really our last chance, and we ought to kind of reclaim it back in the city.
Brinda, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, what Rahul says is what everybody knows, that we lost the mill area, and that has resulted in the gated compound idea coming in. And the gated compound is not just for luxury buildings, that gated compound idea has come in even middle class housing everywhere. So this has completely disconnected the streets from residential areas. And that's very unfortunate, because that's the strength of many cities, that when you walk, you have the shops and the stores and, what we had discussed earlier. And now it's just a gate and all that land is gone. So that's really unfortunate. I think it's sad. The eastern seaboard, it's not totally transparent. We really don't know what's happening. We should have exhibitions open to the public about what is going to happen on the eastern seaboard. So the government and the bureaucracy should be strong enough and brave enough to discuss with citizens what the eastern seaboard, hundreds of acres, is going to be, so we don't end up with the mill area idea again. I think the coastal road, once it's greened, will be lovely. It might be elitist in a way, but it still brings in open spaces for all people, hopefully, with the underpasses and things like that. So we hope that will continue and the race course will not reduce. I don't know what's happening over there, and sometimes I stop reading things because I really don't know what, we want to talk about good things sometimes. So the coastal road, I think, if it gets greened with trees and promenades for people, the pressure on, when you go to Marine Drive, you realize how thirsty and hungry people are for a little bit of open space. Isn't that sad that's the only space people can go to? We should have hundreds of marine drives in a
coastal city.
In a coastal city, we should have hundreds. At least this one should not be taken away and should be really developed. And I think there should be a proper, transparent discussion about the eastern seaboard, definitely. And the third thing, of course, are how slums like Dharavi and all being reconstituted. You know, I personally am not knowledgeable about that. But again, I hope that that is done in a fair and just manner.
What is the one value you will not compromise on
In the studio,
in life?
in life, well, I don't want to sound different, but I think an integrity of practice.
All right.
For me, that's very important, not just for me, but for everybody who works with me. Integrity can mean many different things for different people, but I think that's one of the most important things.
Rahul, how about you?
Yeah, integrity, definitely. But very difficult to answer. What is the one thing that you'll never, that word never is scary, isn't it? So,
The best we can.
yeah, yeah.
Always the best we can.
Overall, and rather than that, I'd say, would you aspire towards? What is the one value you aspire
Fair.
towards?
Let's go with that. What is it that you aspire to?
And what I aspire to in our work and our studio is to somehow create happiness in our space wherever we are. So not only in the product but in the process.
Okay.
It's got to be happy.
Right. Last one. One mistake that taught you the most.
I have one. You want to go first?
I don't know.
We were
One experience. Let's not call it a mistake. One experience.
So one mistake. So, we designed a lot of townships, and the energy in the street is important in a township. And we were doing one for an industrial house, and we had this notion of separating, the pedestrian movement completely from the cars. Okay. And we thought, it'll be fantastic. There's only people walking and cycling, and the cars will all be separate. And when it was done, we said, oh shit, the energy here doesn't work. Somehow you need both to be there, because already in a township, the density is very low. So, coming from Bombay and all that, a lot of our ideas we subject. Very often, our open spaces are too big, because here we're so starved for it, we make spaces too big. So then, we had to really recalibrate that, open spaces need to be appropriate. The scale is important. And this energy of, especially where the density is low, the car and the human being has to be, people walking has to be together. So that was quite a learning.
It's a good learning
for us. Yeah.
And how about you?
Oh, I can't think of one single one. Probably there were many.
One that stood out to you.
I don't know. The practice, I don't think any practice or any project can be totally mistake-free. It's a learning process even during the design process. I really can't think offhand of any singular one that fits in.
One more. Sorry, we have lots of mistakes.
But maybe when Rahul's talking again, I'll keep thinking.
No, so one more. So again, coming from Bombay and coming from a coastal climate, we were designing another township in UP, and we made the windows too big.
Okay.
And we were obsessed with cross ventilation, and the weather over there cross ventilation is not important, right? It's either too cold or too hot. You don't want that hot air to come in. You don't want the cold air to come in. Different times of the year, and the windows were large. We tried to shade them, but just there was so much glare. So it taught us that this sensibility that you bring from one place, you can't just take on to another. So just going back to understanding very carefully what the climate of the place is and being very careful about that was important.
I think one must never miss walking the land, treading the land, the beginning of each project. And now, as I'm getting older and older, sometimes mountainous projects might be difficult. So I think that is something I need to be careful about, if you rather say than rather mistake, that Nandini is of course there, but I still have to make that effort always to walk the land and hear the land and not begin a design process because that land is very far away in the north or in the hills and that will come later. We have to go right in the beginning. I think that is something I'm always trying to make sure I want to do.
So that reminds me of this thing. So there was a project in the south in a hilly place. It was a design competition, and so I went to see this land, and got out, we were walking everywhere, and then I wanted to see what the views were. So I climbed a tree to look up to see, okay, what are the views from up here? And the guy from the company who was showing me around, called his boss and says, "You got to give it to this guy, yeah." The way he's seeing this land, nobody else has seen the land the way he has. He's our guy.
You have to walk the land. Yeah. There are no shortcuts. I think that's the thing in architecture.
Yeah. You try to shortcut in your day.
You can never have a shortcut. That's the mistake that can happen. Like I said, there might be many small mistakes. If you ever try and shortcut anything, it's not going to work.
Okay. Thank you so much, both of you. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in.